Good morning on this last Sunday in September. We're so glad you've joined us today. I'm Martha Sinkula, your service leader. Welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation. And as you know, as a result of the rapid increase of COVID cases with the utmost goal of safety for all, we continue to record services from home. Getting back to the sanctuary will occur when all is safe for everyone of our beloved community. And in the meantime, please stay in touch with others. And we're very grateful for technology able to keep our virtual community open. Our speaker today is Michael Wheeler. He will be available for the after sermon Zoom discussion. Every Sunday, sign in begins at 11:15 with conversation beginning at 11:30. Look for Michael Wheeler's email with the Zoom link, and also check out the previous services and discussions on our YouTube channel anytime. Services have been generally uploaded on Saturday nights. We thank Michael Wheeler and Lucy Swangham for their work on producing these graphics and videos of our services each week. Our chalice lighting words this morning are, we light this chalice to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to reaffirm the historic pledge of our liberal religion to seek justice, which transcends mere legality and moves towards the resolution of true equality, and to share that love, which is ultimately beyond even our cherished reason, that love which unites us. With humility, are called upon as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled with this vision in our hearts and minds. We light our chalice. Our opening words this morning are by Epictetus. Remember that you must behave in life as at a dinner party. It is anything brought round to you, put out your hand and take your share with moderation. Does it pass you by? Don't stop it. Is it not yet come? Don't stretch your desire towards it, but wait till it reaches you. Do this with regard to children, to a wife, to public posts, to riches, and you will eventually be a worthy partner of the feasts of the gods. And if you don't even take the things which are set before you, but are able even to reject them, then you will not only be a partner at the feasts of the gods, but also of their empire. For by doing this, Diogenes, Heraclitus, and others like them deservedly became and were called divine. Now is the time in our service for reflection. Find a comfortable position. Feel the tensions in your body relax. And as we take a slow breath in, breathe in peace. And a slow breath out. Breathe out love. Peace, love. And let us gather our energies as we participate in this three-part meditation. Listen to the words. spend some time in silence and enjoy the music. Go not to the temple to put flowers upon the feet of God. First, fill your own house with the fragrance of love. Go not to the temple to light candles before the altar of God. First, remove the darkness of sin from your heart. Go not to the temple to bow down your head in prayer. First, learn to bow in humility before your fellow man. Go not to the temple to pray on bended knees. First, bend down to lift someone who is downtrodden. Go not to the temple to ask for forgiveness for your sins. First, forgive from your heart those who have sinned against you. Tagore. Our speaker today is Michael Wheeler, our director of music, who has lived in Oregon for over 10 years and is one who cares for humanity.
Well, here we are, friends, in this final Sunday of September, a time of tumult, we might say, certainly a time of uncertainty. And though we would hope otherwise, it seems a time of increasing division in our culture. I always believe that religious messages have a degree of responsibility to be uplifting in some ways. And it seems like with everything that's happening in the world, the ability to be optimistic and the ability to be uplifting is challenged. And maybe that's part of the process. Maybe what ought to be happening is not something of comfort, not a feeling of comfort. Maybe we ought to be disturbed and we ought to be concerned. Because if we were continually complacent, it's very unlikely that the motivation to change or the motivation to be the principled people, if I can use the phrase, people of God, that we ought to be, would not occur. But when I started thinking about this talk, the thing that inspired it was a meme that was going around in the electronic music creation community. Now, in order to understand why this joke or this meme is funny, you do have to have a little bit of vocabulary. So in creating electronic music, there is something called loops and samples. Loops are musical phrases that are pre-produced that you can then drop into your project without having to create them yourself. Samples are sounds that are recorded that can then be sequenced into rhythmic patterns or melodic patterns and then be turned into loops. Okay, so we got that little bit of vocab. So the meme reads, I thought using loops was cheating, so I programmed my own using samples. I then thought using samples was cheating, so I recorded real drums. I then thought that programming it was cheating, so I learned to play drums for real. I then thought using bot drums was cheating, so I learned to make my own. I then thought using pre-made skins was cheating, so I killed a goat and skinned it. I then thought that was cheating too, so I grew my own goat from a baby goat. I also think that is cheating, but I'm not sure where to go from here. I haven't made any music lately, what with all the goat farming and all. So that, believe it or not, that killed in the electronic music making circle as a joke. But it does say something. You know, we could have made a joke equally as humorous to insulated communities by talking about the innovation of making paintings, creating paintings, right? The idea that you can go into a store like Michael's or Utrecht or any of those art supply stores and buy pre-made paints, pre-stretched canvases, pre-made brushes, right? All of these things would have been part of the creative process in an earlier time. When I was taking my art history class, history of Western art as an undergrad, one of the things that we learned about was what the art apprentices had to go through, you know, in the 1600s or the 1500s. And a big part of their job was like crushing rocks to mix with egg and pigment in order to make the paints that then the master would paint with. And just a side note, a lot of those frescoes were mixed with paint that was made from raw egg. And if you could imagine the smell that would have come from those paintings as they were drying, that is an unpleasant thought. Sorry about that. So, do we have a modern analog in the time that we live in now? And how does this fit with what we think of when we think of our spiritual life and when we think of how we conduct our lives as spiritual people? Certainly, there is the ease in the process of using Zoom, right, as opposed to meeting in person. Of course, we make that decision as a sacrifice in order to ensure the safety of everyone, and that makes sense. What if safety were offered at 100%, though? I think certainly for those of us watching at our convenience, those of us posting to YouTube, more or less at our convenience, but on a schedule, I can tell you that my workload, certainly as your music director, has lessened. You know, so life is easier doing things this way. But what are we sacrificing by doing things for ease as opposed to doing things for safety? This is a question that I think we ought to be conscious of as we move forward into this newer and newer technological world. Certainly in the arts community, the value of art, you know, and I'm thinking primarily music, but entertainment in general, has dropped to virtually zero, just because it's so ubiquitous and abundant that there isn't a lot of financial incentive for people to create. At the same time, the ease of creation has become so immediate that everybody who is capable of creating seems to be creating. And how does this affect the way that we think of our relationships? Let me give you a popular phrase in the world of especially New Age spirituality, but also just catchisms that seem to be popular, either floating around social media or used as a comfort to those experiencing the loss of a person. And it goes something like this. People come into our lives for a reason and a season. So people come into our lives for a reason and a season. I find this to be a troubling mindset, right? Not just because it's a bit of wisdom that relies on the fact that two words rhyme. that's frustrating, but that's not the issue. The issue for me, coming from a culture that was so heavily influenced by social cohesion. So most of you know I spent the majority of my formative years, my early life, in Japan. And countries that have Confucian influence, even though Japan is not a Chinese country, but that's beside the point. But if you think of countries like China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, all of these countries that had a lot of contact with Confucian philosophy, one of the things that is paramount is that when you form relationships for life, right? The idea that a friendship is something that you can walk away from is somewhat anathema to the way that people conduct themselves in those cultures. And you don't have to go very far in your thinking to understand why. Why is it that people value that human interaction and that human relationship above all else? Well, you know, if you come from a culture where there is limited social security, there's no welfare, there's no, you know, I know they have these things now, but I'm talking about as the cultures formed. The only assurance that you have in survival is in the relationships that you form. Therefore, the relationships that you form ought to be sacred. Now, if technological development and greater, what would you call it, greater bureaucracy in society ensures a standard of living that nature does not ensure, right? So we have technologically built up our society to a way to ensure human survival or human comfort in a way that nature left to her devices never could. Then those bonds that we form in a nature-based society or, you know, a community then start to dissolve. So now, as living becomes easier, as society becomes more stable, what does that do to the necessity of our interactions? And as a church community, the UUUC is going to have to wrestle with this. Are we essential or are we auxiliary? And that's not necessarily an easy question to answer. So the idea of people enter our lives for a reason and a season is something that is only possible through modern convenience. And if we enter into relationships and social contracts with the knowledge that we don't need each other, that makes leaving all the easier. And that concerns me. But what if it's not that way? What if our need for each other goes beyond simply the physical? You know, it goes beyond simply the survival. What if there is a spiritual element that requires community? And this is where I think we can be helpful. Well, we can certainly be helpful. This is where we can be hopeful. And that is, with all of the comforts in the world that you could have, we still need community. We still need family. And where we draw those relationships are going to be the source of strength as we move forward to tackle the troubling things that we see around us. And I'm not naive. I understand that the world has faced peril in every generation. This idea of COVID and families being torn apart by politics and a looming conflict with other nations, the potential for civil war and civil unrest. These are not issues that only this generation has faced, but they are issues. And how we deal with those issues will tell us whether or not we truly have a community or a society or not. I remain optimistic, but not Pollyannish about it. I believe that an awakening is going to be forced on us, where we will see the necessity for social cohesion. We will see the necessity for a national culture of fraternity and sorority, that we will realize that no matter how strong we are as individuals, or even as groups that we assign ourselves to fatuously, that we are a human people with individual strengths. And as soon as we figure out a way to maximize everyone's participation in society, the sooner we will graduate to a better world where we can keep all of the beauty that works for us, all of the tradition that serves us, all the while seeking out newer and better ways of doing things. My beloved community, I wish you nothing but the best. I wish you nothing but the best as you move forward in your search for a minister, as you come to terms with how you tackle the challenges that face us. God bless you, and may all your days be as bright as they can be.
Our words today as we close are by Boethius from the Consolation of Philosophy. Again, should it be esteemed a trifling boon, thinkest thou, that this cruel, this odious fortune hath discovered to thee the hearts of thy faithful friends, that other hid from thee alike the faces of true friends and of the false. But in departing, she had taken away her friends and left thee thine? What price wouldst thou not have given for this service in the fullness of thy prosperity, when thou seemest to thyself fortunate? Cease, then, to search the wealth thou hast lost, since in true friends thou hast found the most precious of all riches. Go now in peace, and blessed be.